everybody, and welcome to So Says Shernoff. It is so good to have you here. I'm Josh Shernoff, and we have got a fun one for you today. But before we get started, make sure you're following us on social media at So Says Shernoff and at Shernoff Show. Subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/So Says Shernoff. And of course, find our great merchandise over at prowrestlingtees.com/So Says Shernoff. All right, let's take a look at some headlines. Last month, we discussed Marty Jannetty's blatant admission to murder. Well, this month, he's back. Let's see what he had to post this time. Quote, "This is why I stay in trouble, because I speak real talk, and that doesn't fit in today's slanted social media world. But I'm gonna say it if I feel it's real, like right now. I'm all for white people understanding that black, nope, that's no, not touching that." Maybe we should look at his post where he explains that the whole murder thing was just the start of a wrestling storyline. Yep, the post that had absolutely nothing to do with wrestling was the start of a wrestling storyline for the 60-year-old Jannetty, who, for the record, not affiliated with any wrestling company. He did claim that a friend of his who was a disgruntled corrections officer would, quote, redeem himself by serving justice on me to earn back his stripes, which, in fairness, is how most 30-year-old murder cases are settled, with a corrections officer wrestling the alleged murderer. In the end, Marty did go on to clarify that there was a lot of truth to the original statement and that, in fact, the pot dealer did try to touch his genitals, but when Marty said no, instead of being attacked by the dealer, forcing Marty to, quote, make him disappear, they went back inside and, quote, he never touched my dick and balls again. So, we was good. My absolute favorite part of this whole alphabet soup of a post was this. Quote, "It got so hot I had to drop it. When my Columbus, Georgia Police Department got involved, I knew I had to drop it." Or as my bruh Snoop Dogg says, drop it like it's hot, drop it like it's hot. LOL, loves you, Snoopy. The juxtaposition between the seriousness of the content and the lunacy of the delivery is astounding. You know, you hate to see something like this tarnish Jannetty's legacy, but then you start to wonder if this is really new. Is it senility? Too many chair shots? Too much rockin' and rollin'? Or was he always like this? And if he was always like this, then that kind of rewrites history, because the legendary heel turn by Shawn Michaels when he threw Marty through the window of the barbershop set is really called into question. If these are the ramblings that Michaels had to listen to every day for almost a decade, then who the hell can blame him for throwing Jannetty through a window? Shawn Michaels has the patience of a saint for having not done that sooner. So maybe one of the greatest heel turns in wrestling history may in fact have been the biggest babyface move in wrestling history. Either way, the good news is it looks like Marty didn't kill anyone and instead just faked a story about being raped and murdering someone to further a non-existent wrestling angle. So there's that. Moving on. WWE Battleground, the video game, has been released, and while some people like it and some people don't, everyone was surprised to find a little Easter egg in there in the form of Tessa Blanchard. That's right, Tessa is featured in the game in this image. Now, while many immediately jumped to the conclusion that something was spoiled and she must be a downloadable player once she officially debuts with WWE, well, as my old friend and guy whose appearance on my show is directly related to his return to WWE would say, I'm afraid I've got some bad news. There is no hidden meaning to this picture being in there. An artist was asked to draw a female wrestler, so they found a picture of Tessa and drew off of it, not knowing she didn't work for the company. Don't believe me? Well, for one, the picture they drew from was this image from Impact Wrestling taken by the talented Basil Mahmoud, who pointed out that he was never contacted for use of this image. But if that doesn't convince you, then let me tell you a story about a young kid who only gave his permission to have his photo in a magazine and ended up in WWF Raw as a creator wrestler. This is real, and you might be thinking, I see it, I guess, but that's probably just a coincidence. Well, my old buddy JD was also in the magazine, and I know, how could you not look at this picture and say that is the face people all over the world will want to represent their creator wrestler? Menacing. So, yeah, obviously, this was an oversight, and Tessa's image has been removed from the game as though it never happened, much like her championship run in Impact Wrestling. Thunderdome. The world was buzzing when WWE said they were leaving the PC to begin a residency that would transform the Amway Center in Orlando into the Thunderdome. People were excited. They were curious. One former WWE superstar was even quoted as saying, "I hope it f***ing fails miserably." Nice. The Thunderdome happens to resemble an idea first pitched to AEW via Twitter by wrestling legend and wrecker of bathrooms, the Blue Meanie, who just so happens to be my co-host every week on the Mind of the Meanie podcast on the MLW Radio Network, and just happens to be selling this Wreck Every Bathroom and Leave shirt over at ProWrestlingTees.com/Mind of the Meanie. Anyway, Thunderdome is a light show meets pyrotechnics bonanza meets company-wide Zoom call. And I just have to point out how unfair this is. When I went to Raw, I had to wear pants. Now you have an entire arena filled with pantsless people. Not to mention the hypocrisy. You remember when WWE made those fans take off their AEW shirts? Well, now Kenny Omega is sitting in the crowd. Yes, the WWE Universe decided to troll the Thunderdome. From Omega to the far more offensive images of Chris Benoit, the Ku Klux Klan, and Pikachu. But ironically, as the WWE has allowed fans to be more interactive, the WWE superstars have been told to cut that shit out. Vince McMahon called for his superstars to stop many third-party platforms, and talent was not happy. This came the same day as the announced release of Akam and Razar, the authors of Pain. Coincidence? I mean, obviously, they were like, you can take our manager, our push, strip us of our dignity, but don't you even think about touching our Twitch account. Now, it should be noted that WWE has backstepped a little, now saying that Twitch and YouTube are acceptable as long as the talent use their real names. Look, here's pretty much what it comes down to. Talent needs that side hustle, especially right now. They aren't getting the house show money, and I imagine pay-per-view bonuses are down or out given the current climate. But on the other hand, the talent signed contracts. They agreed to these terms, even if the terms are terrible, which speaks to a larger issue, one that former presidential candidate and man with a garage full of blue hats, Andrew Yang, has been vocal about. Talent is taken advantage of for sure, but until we see a union or a specific legal definition of an independent contractor being challenged and enforced, this is how it is. Talent will have to roll with whatever crazy edict McMahon and company dream up. But looking at it from the other side, why wouldn't McMahon want total control over his talent? It's hard to imagine what the world would have looked like if 1980s era Hulk Hogan was tweeting. Would it have been a bunch of say your prayers and take your vitamins, brother? Or would it have been the same as this gem from 8 years ago, quote, "Good night, Hulkamaniacs, and jabroni marks without a life that don't know it's a work when you work a work and work yourself into a shoot, marks." There is something to be said for the office controlling a wrestler's social media activity. Don't believe me? Google Marty Jannetty. We'll be right back.
Here's a story.
Take a trip into the mind of the meanie with Meanie Tunes. An animated look at the Blue Meanie's most hilarious stories.
Why did you eat that?
Available at youtube.com/mindofthemeanie. Oh, man. Subscribe now. Welcome back to the show. Last season, or 15 years ago by the looks of this picture, we talked about people's obsession with wrestlers jumping ship. Today, I bring you the 2020 version where everything that used to make sense doesn't. Back in the Attitude Era, people loved to watch a wrestler jump from WWF to WCW or vice versa. It was a shot of adrenaline into the career of that athlete, even if for a brief moment. People like Crush floundered in the WWF's DOA until showing up as part of WCW's NWO. Did it matter in the long term, or even the following week? No. But for that one glorious night, we dreamt of a future where Bryan Adams would hold World Championship gold above his head, staring into your living rooms through the TV set, declaring that everything he does it for you. Today's wrestling fans are different. While some people are excited to see the likes of FTR, Matt Cardona, and most recently the former Rusev, Miro, in AEW, others are referring to it as a WWE life raft. They complain that all the AEW originals are being left behind to shine the spotlight on the former WWE superstars. And here's my issue with that. First, they're professional wrestlers. It's their career. If everyone that works at the local Starbucks jumps ship to the local Wawa, I may be like, oh, that's interesting. But as long as they ring up my coffee correctly, I really don't give a damn. They are trying to make a living, and because of their ability, they were able to be picked up by another Major League Wrestling company. Not to be confused with the Major League Wrestling Company, MLW, who have a wonderful radio network, by the way. But MLW and Impact and Ring of Honor and NWA are all going to dip into the pool of talent let go by WWE, if for no other reason than the incredible upside. At worst, you have a bunch of recognizable wrestlers, some with decades of experience on the largest stage, helping to elevate awareness as well as the quality of your product. And that's at worst. At best, your company gains a reputation of knowing how to properly use formerly misused talent. Why fans are so down on this makes no sense. Miro got over huge in WWE, but management, for whatever reason, held him back or put him in a box or a cake. Why shouldn't AEW pick up someone with his following and talent? Why shouldn't he get the chance to entertain the fans and make a living? Some wrestling fans can be so fickle. Nobody in any company, even the big bad WWE, are hiring people just to pee in your Cheerios. They are bringing in the biggest and best talent they can to better their overall product. Not everyone can be number 1 or even number 2 through 9. Those spots are already taken. We saw the same thing when Kurt Angle went to TNA, only that was welcomed for what it was. The chance to build new stars and see dream matches like Angle versus AJ or Angle versus Joe. I didn't scoff at Angle's debut. I was excited like Meltzer watching Kenny Omega, only my excitement didn't manifest itself physically. Block me. I'm already blocked. Woo. Now look, it's not fair to say that TNA wasn't labeled the new WCW, and it's not fair to say that WCW's downfall has not been attributed to bringing in tons of former WWF stars. But in the case of these other companies today, AEW specifically, they aren't just trying to grab a quick rating spike. They're trying to cultivate talent for the long-term betterment of their company. Look, the WWE is filled with the best of the best from top to bottom, but they don't always get it right. Oftentimes they miss out on a true talent and what they have to offer. Eric Young, EC3, Brian Myers, all 3 of those guys were running around chasing the 24/7 title. Now they're back in Impact and are either being treated as main event guys or, in Young's case, is the world champion. Does that make Impact less than WWE? No. They are less than WWE, but not because of that. And why a place with such talent in front and behind the camera is as low on the wrestling totem pole as Impact will forever be a mystery. But it's okay for other promotions to see something in talent that one man couldn't see in WWE. Talent finds a way to rise to the top. Anyone being held back by new ex-WWE guys coming in will either work twice as hard to prove their worth, or they'll leave for a better opportunity elsewhere, just like all those WWE guys stealing their spotlight. It's the circle of life, and it moves us all. We'll be right back. Take a trip into the mind of the Meaning, a brand new podcast featuring former WWE and ECW star, The Blue Meaning. We'll cover wrestling, music, movies, sports, and lots of useless knowledge, all contained in the mind of the Meaning. Subscribe now and follow us on social media at Mind of the Meanie. Welcome back to the show. My guest right now is the reigning NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He's a national treasure, and he joins us right now. Nick Aldis, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Josh.
So I want to jump right into it. You just recently passed a huge milestone as champion, over 700 days into your current title reign. And even more noteworthy, perhaps, is the cumulative, if I can say that well, days as NWA champion. So you have broken into the top 10. You're, I believe, as of right now, number 9, but very quickly gaining on numbers 8 through 6. They're right around the same amount there. So, you know, the last 20 years or so, I feel like world championships have played hot potato. What does it mean to you to be able to hold the title for that long? And what do you think it means in general to that 10 pounds of gold, as we call it, to have a champion who's holding that title for so long?
Well, I'll start with the easy part, the personal part, which is, yeah, it's certainly a great feeling. It's certainly very humbling to be in the company that I am in that group of people.
Sure.
Obviously, we have to, we can't shy away from the fact that COVID has certainly prevented, the title being very active. Although I have, had a few defenses here and there. But really, what I'm more proud of is how we've been able to do something that I think a lot of wrestling industry people and fans alike thought was previously not possible anymore. And I think honestly, you could apply that statement to a lot of the things that we've done with the NWA. Sure. But I think there's this idea that, guys having long title reigns and, doing a long, slow build to one big title match and all these sorts of things. That's all passé. That's all stuff that they used to do in the old days, and it doesn't work anymore. No, it does. Mm-hmm. It does. It doesn't necessarily work for everyone. And I think that's really the point I'm always trying to get across with all of our stuff. Like, wrestling has become very derisive, in the sense that if you endorse or perpetuate a certain philosophy or idea, it's immediately seen as sort of an aggressive move toward an opposing viewpoint, which Sure. is like not the case with us at all. Like, just because we decided that we wanted to restore a lot of the values and the traditions that we thought would work, to making the NWA stand out as a brand in the modern era, it doesn't mean that we're taking shots at the way that other guys decide to do their stuff.
Of course.
It's if anything, it's a deliberate move to be different. I dare say that if every other promotion was having long title reigns and, doing sort of, dramatic, sort of luxurious builds to their title matches, we would probably be doing more hot potato and doing more shock value, shotgun kind of booking. Mm-hmm. The reality is that, we're trying to stand out in a crowded marketplace.
Right.
So and I know that I'm sort of going off point here, but that's, one of the reasons why Billy purchased the NWA in the first place was because he saw value in it when others didn't. I mean, go back and listen to what Brian Last, Cornette's stooge and other people said when he bought it, what did we buy? It's not worth anything, yada, yada. Okay. Well, I think that, in a few years from now, you might see that this brand is worth, quite a considerable amount.
Yeah. That's a sign of that's a sign of a good investment, right? Buy it pennies on the dollar because it's barely worth anything. And Sure. build it back up into what you guys have already been able to build it up to. Not that it was worth nothing. A lot of people, I think, didn't have the vision that Billy Corgan had, and a lot of other people that were working with it had, to say there is still something here to that NWA name and that legacy.
Well, I think that what those detractors missed was that what Billy was purchasing was a brand which he could then hang his philosophy on,
right,
which was easier than trying to to try to introduce a brand new brand when there's already so many who are vying for your attention of like, hey, we're AEW and we're this company, with that company, with Lucha Underground, and these are great examples of new brands that have been successful and have managed to sort of solidify their place. What we saw, and this is going back to 2017, was that pretty much the entire industry was going one way. Mm-hmm. It was all kind of, because wrestling has a tendency to go in sort of trends, right, and fashions. So, okay, New Japan's hot. At the time, Ring of Honor is hot. The indies are sort of heating up because people are kind of just looking for an alternative, right, which is totally fine. And so then this sort of style became, and then it permeated WWE. If you watch WWE shows today, the wrestling that's taking place in the ring on average is vastly different to the wrestling that was taking place in a WWE ring even 10 years ago, but right, certainly 20 years ago. It's much more similar to this type of stuff you would have been seeing in a Ring of Honor ring in the mid 2000s.
I mean, it's a lot of the roster is made up of people from Ring of Honor in the mid 2000s.
Right, exactly. Yep. It became this, high impact, fast paced, kind of style. And we looked at all of it and went, okay, there's most of the industry is heading this way. A lot of emphasis on sort of dream match booking and just like, oh, this is going to be such a good match. That these two guys are going to execute a good wrestling match with each other and do great moves and, do all these great spots and remember all this stuff. And while that's all impressive, we were kind of like, okay, all the industry is focusing on that. What's missing? Okay, the emotional investment, the big fight feel, the prize fight approach, the high stakes sort of the value in the championship, the prestige and the honor and the lineage. Okay, what's the best way to establish that? Oh, the NWA is for sale. Well, okay, we'll combine that with being able to get a hold of the rights to some Paul Bosch footage, sure, library footage, and suddenly we've got some pretty kick-ass packages reminding everybody that, hey, Dory Funk Jr., Jack Briscoe, Harley Race, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, this is what we're talking about here, guys. This is the world championship. This is the birther. You know what I mean? This is the granddaddy of them all. This is the lineal heavyweight championship of the world. And everybody went, oh, that is kind of cool, And, and that alone was worth the investment if you're going to be serious about this. Yeah. Was it going to immediately trend on Twitter? No, but there is no value in that. Right. I think that's been proven time and time again. I think that's the biggest flaw in the industry right now is that, as always, the wrestling industry tends to go for the low-hanging fruit, and the short term, like they want that. It's like they're like junkies, they want that hit of endorphins, like, oh, everyone's talking about me on Twitter, you know what I mean? Like, cool, I must have done something right. And it's like, well, sometimes you're going to make a long-term investment and remind everybody that there's more to this than simply, than just the sort of short-term gratification of a bunch of people, anonymous people, kind of praising something that happened that gets forgotten the next day.
Absolutely. And you mentioned before when you were talking about how long you've held the championship for this reign, that obviously you can't discount COVID and that kind of allowed you to rack up some days there. Same can be said for absolutely anybody else who's been champion anywhere else in this time period. So, it kind of balances itself out. But, one of the things that struck me with the NWA was, going back to that set, which is going to be in Retromania is even going to be in that. I know you're in that, and I'm the ring announcer for Retromania. So I've already had the pleasure of announcing you to the ring.
Wow!
But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. But
if I'd have known that, I may have put an extra 0 on my contract.
Yeah, right. You're not the only one. So the the nice thing about NWA when it went into that studio and kind of recreated that studio was, and going on YouTube and everything, you really were able to, as you had mentioned before, the ability to just kind of be an alternative, to be something different than what you were seeing on TV and the giant arenas and light spectacle and all that stuff. Obviously, with COVID happening, that kind of shut down, that stopped. You were most recently seen on the debuting for the United Wrestling Network Primetime Live. Obviously, the NWA has a relationship now, and a long-running relationship with the people behind the scenes of that. Is there an expectation that you will get back to NWA Power, that's going to happen again? Are we kind of shifting gears and saying, hey, we don't know exactly what the future is going to be at this point, so we'll be involved here?
I think that I personally look at Primetime Live as a United Wrestling Network project that we agreed to participate in, as a short-term solution to provide some of their fans who are, very, very dedicated to the product, and to some of the NWA fans who are dedicated enough to be willing to pay for a pay-per-view, to give them a fix of some NWA talent and NWA championship matches and things of that nature. But I see it as a bridge. And my intention internally is to figure out a way to get back to doing NWA Power. That's what fans have come to expect. That's what they love. That's what they want. We listen, we see the feedback, we hear the fans, we know you want Power back. Frankly, what we have to figure out is the economics of it. We were before COVID, we were on course to have a very successful pay-per-view, and we were getting ready to do it at an arena. And I'm confident that we were going to actually fill that arena, the Gateway Center in Atlanta. And God willing, one day, we hopefully will revisit that, because they were great to work with. This brand new arena, this beautiful building. And so that was a little different, because the purpose of Power at that point was to create a shop window. Here's what we do, and it was very much an old school approach, in that the television product, for lack of a better term, I know it's not on television, but
this day and age, it's on television, right?
The purpose of the show was to drive people to pay-per-view and live events and merchandise. Now, without the ability to generate revenue from tickets, it may be a little, we may have to adjust it a little bit to sort of to make up for that. But again, this is just me talking now. Right. I try to be transparent as best I can with our audience, because I believe that that's one of the reasons we've been able to keep their loyalty, during such a period of low activity, because I've been honest with them. So we're doing the best we can to make it happen. It may require, it may require things to be done a little differently, but it basically in a way that makes it viable for us to do that show again. Yeah. Because that's what we want to see. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to be a part of. That's why I stay put. Because I love that show, and I really feel that the energy of that show, and it's not, I don't think I'm out of bounds by saying this, but clearly it had a pretty significant effect on the industry, just given the fact that, a bunch of the talent that we booked for the first couple of seasons of that show have since gone on to, to get on board with the big two. So it's like, that's a proud moment. And I know that that's another thing that wrestling fans they're just so bloodthirsty about these kind of things. Like, they stole the talent. No, those guys were not under long-term contracts. Like we do the show in seasons, like any other, like a TV show. So there's only a few of us who are on long-term contracts. I'm one of them. Most of the guys are signed to do a season of the show. So think of it as, there's a kind of core cast, main cast of the show, and then there are supporting casts, and there are different guest stars, for different seasons. That's a good way for us to do business. It keeps us fresh. It doesn't get us locked into a bunch of talent contracts. It doesn't create unrest with a bunch of talent who want to be, doing more or making more. That's totally cool. Like this is, I want the show to be looked at as a way for wrestlers to go, man, I'd love to go do a season of that show.
Right.
Instead of thinking, I want to sign with the NWA for 5 years, and
and that's the thing. And there's nothing wrong with having it be a stepping stone in their career. Doesn't mean it's a stepping stone for everybody. And at the same time, you have, you talked about what you're doing with the United Wrestling Network and kind of working with them as a bridge. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was Thunder Rosa, showing up in AEW as the NWA Women's Champion. And so there's something to be said for whether it's something like that, just popping in, or leaving after a season or two from NWA Power, going somewhere else. People go, oh, where did they come from? Oh, NWA Power. Oh, I've never seen that. Well, you got to see it. And, and it's more eyeballs. And there's such a passionate audience for NWA Power. Yeah. That's one thing I saw. There weren't a lot of people who were like, oh, check that out for a minute. They were very passionate.
If you watch our show, it's because you love it. Mm-hmm. And if you came to the studio, you came because you wanted to be a part of it. And that's what you want from an audience. You don't want them to go just because they want to go to sort of hate watch it, or or because they want to get themselves over with some like dumb sign or something. It's like sure. they came because they wanted to be a part of the energy, and they wanted to sort of contribute to the overall viewing experience, which is a really cool sort of synergy with the talent, the office, and the fans. I'd also expand on your point and say that I would love to see a situation where talent who are under contract, even if they're long-term contracts to other promotions, be able to say, hey, do you think we could figure out a way where I could go and do a season of NWA Power? Mm-hmm. I think it would really freshen me up. I think it'd give me a fresh coat of paint. It'd be really, I think if I worked a program with so-and-so, if I came and, if I did this, did that, I really think everyone involved would benefit. And I think that one of the biggest issues that faces the industry overall is overexposure of talent and stale storytelling. Sure. Because when the NWA, since its inception in the modern era, since under Billy Corgan, we've already collaborated with Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, and AEW. Mm-hmm. Okay,
that's pretty good. So
it's like because we believe in the power of our brand, and we don't see those other brands as threats,
right? Because
we understand, we have an approach, and our business model is like, okay, this is we know where we want to go. Right. We know what we will it work? I don't know. We're gonna with obviously with COVID, no one really knows anything now, but sure. there was a definitive plan in place for sort of how to sort of build this brand and make it viable. And in a lot of ways, we were looking at ourselves as we wanted to be In-N-Out Burger. Mm. If WWE is McDonald's and AEW is Burger King, we wanted to be In-N-Out Burger, where they're not as easy to find, and you can't have them all the time. But when you go to the West Coast, you go, oh man, I think I want to hit an In-N-Out Burger. Right. Because it's got this reputation. It's like, oh, did you go to In-N-Out Burger? Like, oh yeah, it's great. Because it's limited. It feels a bit more special, and that's kind of what we wanted to do. And so, in our minds, we don't see ourselves as trying to sort of take a chunk out of WWE's ass or AEW's or anyone else's. It's like we kind of have our own thing, and studio wrestling, is like there's a market for it. It's and there's a way to use it to sort of to build in an interesting way to compelling pay-per-views, but it's also a way to showcase talent in a way that was previously, unavailable to them, because they had to sort of fit into these sort of different formulas and stuff like that. Whereas like this is a way for them, it's much more intimate. Mm-hmm. So it's like an Eddie Kingston, anyone in the industry knew how great Eddie was on the mic, but perhaps it wasn't as universally understood by fans, because he had always had to sort of fit into the typical format of a what I call the Monday night format, right. Which is the format established by Nitro and then Raw, which is sort of still in place to this day, which is, a 2-hour show or 3-hour show, in-ring promo, match, the segment. Mm-hmm. Well, this was the format sort of prior to that. Right. And now it's, and obviously with our own spin on it, and different in some ways, because obviously we've got technological advancements that allow us to do new stuff. But it was a way for people to be like, man, like, I actually want to see these promos. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not cringing through these promos because it's awkward and weird and, hard to watch. Like, I genuinely want to see who's coming out next to the podium to, cut a promo, because this is fun. So
circling back to one of the things we were talking about before, I'd mentioned Thunder Rosa in AEW. Obviously, you were talking about in the beginning of this interview about the kind of the long build of a story. The first time in a long time that I saw one of those in the more recent years was you and Cody building up to All In. And a lot of people consider All In to be the unofficial start of AEW, even though obviously there was so much going on, behind the scenes differently. Ring of Honor played a large role in making that happen. But if you look at Thunder Rosa being there as the NWA Women's Champion, is that something you'd be interested in? Is that something that you think people could see in the future of you? Because again, while you've had no involvement with AEW, in a way, you're still kind of seen as being there at the beginning, the birth of AEW. So is that something that you think there's an opportunity there for you to possibly show up on their TV?
Yeah, sure. I think that just from the amount of fan sentiment alone, should tell you that it's definitely something in the water supply. It's definitely something that it seems to be something that fans want, and obviously that's cool with me, and I appreciate it. I think obviously I am very synonymous with the NWA brand in the modern era, but at the same time, I think in a lot of ways, I think I feel like my rivalry with Cody almost transcends the business, because it's now happened once at All In, which was a Ring of Honor funded independent show with a collaboration with the NWA and different promotions, right? Mm-hmm. And then our rematch happened on an NWA show. It's like, I just feel like Cody versus Aldis is sort of seen in its own separate way, sort of irrespective of promotions. Mm-hmm. And I mean, look, that's how that should be the dream for all wrestlers, to be considered, to sort of transcend their promotion, because we're independent contractors. No wrestler should really want to be completely synonymous with one brand or promotion, because it puts too much power in the hands of the promotion. One of the reasons the territory system worked was because wrestlers were able to establish themselves as draws and as independent businesses, without, by collaborating with different promoters for short periods of time and proving their worth. Right. And then being like, I'm going to finish up, I'm moving on. So that, wait, could you do this? Or hey, can we figure something out where you come back in 6 weeks and work with Lawler, or can you, come back in 6 weeks and work with Dusty, or, whatever. Right. I would love to see a return to that. I think, AEW are obviously very much in a heavy sort of signing mode at the moment. It's like lock up talent, lock up talent, lock up talent. Conversely, it puts that pressure on all these other promotions. Well, who have you got under contract? Oh, you're losing talent. Who are you? Who's leaving? And they're not leaving,
right?
We're not working. They're moving on for a while, right? And it's like that's where the big companies win, because they take all these wrestlers who say they want all these things, right? They say they want to be in control of their own destiny. They say they want to have control over their own character. They say they want to run their own business. They want to do their own cameo and Twitch and yada yada, and they want to do their own pro wrestling tees. But the second somebody puts a contract down in front of them, they slop it up like a pig at a trough, right? Oh, give me, because it's this status thing. It's this like desperation to I have to be under contract somewhere, otherwise everyone will think I'm a loser.
Do you think it's that? Do you think there's the aspect of the perceived stability? Yes. And I say perceived because we've seen how easily someone can be released from a contract. But that perceived stability, along with, of course, the notoriety of I'm signed with, insert large promotion here.
Well, it's like if you're a lawyer, you could, and a big law firm offered you, $500,000 a year to work for them, so you have to take the cases they give you, and you have to, work with the clients. They might be assholes or whatever. You have to do whatever, basically do what they say. Or you could start your own firm, and that you've got X amount of clients that will work with you on a retainer to make the same amount. Which one would you do?
Right. But I think that depends on the work ethic of the person, because not everybody has that in them to really take themselves as a brand, which is something that you, and not just blowing smoke here, something that you've proven to be very good at, to be able to take yourself and independently of the NWA. And again, we talked about you kind of being the face of the NWA now, of course, being champion for, a combined 900, almost 1,000 days. But yeah, I think that there's something to be said, and maybe you have to give more credit to people like you for having that ability to be able to do that. Some people might say, I want that comfort of someone.
I don't know. I mean, I just think that it's, I wish that more people, more talent, were secure enough to play the field a bit longer rather than be immediately trying to look for the next place to sign. And I get it. I understand stability. I'm somebody who, the last TNA contract I had, I accepted less money in exchange for it being a no-cut contract, right? Like if there was one number on the table and I sent it back, said, I'll take this if you can't fire me, right? And you pay my hotels and you do this and do that. So it was like, I get it. I get the stability part of it because the contracts ain't worth the paper they're written on most of the time.
Sure.
They can just, when you have a contract, they say, we're going to pay you this amount per week or per month or whatever to be a wrestler for us, but we can end it anytime we want. It's, I get it, but it's also why you should be at least trying to establish some of your own market value, independently of someone else's platform.
So speaking, I'm sorry, no, continue.
No, please.
No, I was going to say, speaking of being able to do something like that, that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. We talked about your ability to kind of be a brand in and onto yourself. Cella Toys out of the UK announced recently over the last month that they're going to be doing a limited 2,000 piece run of a Nick Aldis retro style figure, very much in the style of those old Hasbro WWF figures. The figure looks amazing. They've shown every step from the artwork to the 3D model to the prototype. Haven't seen the actual one yet. How did that come about? The idea of you having your own action figure, and I don't know how much you have your finger on the pulse of the action figure community, people who love that. But one of the things that had been very, very popular, Mattel was making these retro style wrestling figures, and then they ended that line, and collectors were furious over that. And they've been wanting that. So the idea, all of a sudden, now this pops up, and we're like, wait a minute, someone else is kind of doing this retro thing, and we're getting Nick Aldis, who has never been in that style of a figure before. Obviously, you had in TNA, you had those days. But how did this come about? Just kind of take us through that, if you would.
Well, very simply, the Cella Toys are a startup company. They're based in England. It's a couple, Charles and Ella. That's where the name Cella came from. And they just reached out, and they basically very straightforwardly kind of explained what they were going to do, and that I was not that familiar with the action figure collecting. I knew that it was there, but I don't know what they're saying. I don't follow it. But Charles did explain to me that there was a sort of an affection and a demand for the Hasbro style, and the retro style thing. And I can appreciate that, because those were the last action figures I owned. I had the spring loaded ones, when I was a kid, and and so I got it right away. And he basically said he couldn't think of anyone better to because of the sort of retro forward style of the NWA and the NWA Power, and because of the sensibilities of the NWA audience, it made sense, and it made sense to me. We came to a deal very easily. I actually just got my first royalty payment today. And it's so funny because, I had, I think, 2 different figures during my time at TNA. I even had a figure with gladiators. Yeah. I've made money from this figure, and it hasn't even been released yet. They haven't made from any of those, from the license fee and the royalties. But that's a perfect example of what I'm saying, is that I was able to personally negotiate the licensing fee and a royalty, for that action figure, as opposed to the company negotiates a big wide one for itself and then tells you, like, oh, here's your 5% of our 20%, or whatever, whatever they're right. You know what I mean? And it's like minus tax, minus costs, net, like, and it's like, oh, cool. I made like 70 cents off that figure that sold for $20.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Thanks. And now it's like the figure that is made of my likeness in my gear that I designed, my body that I worked in the gym to fucking make, and as it was my name, and sold to my fans who I've cultivated with my work, who've taken bumps for. Now I get paid a fair amount for it, and again, that's just, if you could, there are a lot of different ways to skin a cat. If WWE gonna offer you a big money contract, good for you, man. But there are other ways to get there, and there are ways to do it where you feel in control of your own destiny. And I can tell you, it's empowering, and you learn a lot, and it sets you up with skills that you don't have if you're just caught. Like, I've seen guys come out of WWE who have made a great amount of money, a lot more than I have, but they're so ill-equipped, to deal with sort of handling them, their own business,
right? Because
they're so used to just having a team of people to, wipe their ass for them and tell them where to go and what to do, and and they just get checks in the mail, and they just have no sort of appreciation for the process. So then, when this other stuff comes through, it's like, unless they have an agent, and even then, if that agent gets a sniff of like their ignorance, then the agent's going to probably fleece them too. Yeah. So it's like, it's really just, I don't know. It's just a case of, do you want to be in the business, or do you want to be a business? Because ultimately, if you're going to have longevity in this, and you don't want to have to kiss the ring and kiss people's ass and eat shit all the time, you might be better off learning how to be a business.
That's really good advice. And obviously something that you're living, as opposed to just preaching it. You very much are doing that. And it's great because, then you have brands like the NWA that benefit from being attached to you just as much as you could be benefiting attached to someone else. And it's nice to be able to see that.
Right there.
Yeah.
Billy and I have always had an understanding that we collaborate. You know, when it comes to anything to do with the NWA, Billy is the final say. It's his deal, you know. Sure. But if it's something to do with me, you know, on the NWA platform, it's a 50-50 conversation, you know. And if I'm lending my counsel on the overall, you know, strategic decisions of the NWA, he takes it on board to a great level. Now, does he always go with my ideas? No. Like, does he always agree with me? Absolutely not. Of course not. And are there times where I'm sure he's probably going, oh God, you know, what's he come up with this time? And there are times where I'm going like, oh, why can't he see it my way? But ultimately, you know, when it all boils down, we know that we're both looking to achieve the same thing, which is to achieve success for this entity. I'm not devaluing the NWA to try to increase my own value so I can go on somewhere else. We're trying to simultaneously increase, you know, the value of both our brands, my personal brand and the overall NWA brand. And I think everyone would agree at this point, you know, from 2017 to now, that has happened.
I happen to agree with that. And and listen, I thank you so much. I could talk to you for hours, I feel like, on here, because it's very interesting. Your journey, like you said, since 2017, it's very interesting the way that you really have taken on this idea that you are the business, you are the product, and you're just going out to these various different places and applying your trade and continuing to build that. And I wish you nothing but the best, continued success. I'm excited to see what comes next when the, you know, apocalypse is over and the world kind of comes back to life. I think that there's going to be a lot of big things in the NWA's future and in yours as well. And I'm looking forward to that. And I thank you so much for coming on the show. Can you tell people where they can find you? Anyone who's not familiar with your social media?
Sure. I'm on Twitter at Real Nick Aldis and on Instagram at Nick Aldis. I'm verified on both, so just look for the blue tick. And the NWA is very simple, just at NWA across all the platforms, and youtube.com/NWA. You can check out every episode of NWA Power. I think there's 21 episodes total. If you really want a genuine alternative and you love good promos and matches that make sense and an atmosphere and a feeling of like genuine characters and authentic storytelling, check it out. Plus the 10 Pounds of Gold series, which kind of gave birth to all of it. And there's even, you know, it covers everything from Nick Aldis' Tim Storm all the way through to Cody and I All In, NWA 70, the entire the full match from NWA 70, Cody and I 2 out of 3 falls. It went like 40 something minutes. That's all on the NWA YouTube channel. youtube.com/NWA.
All right, well, thank you again so much for taking the time to join me here. Everybody, Nick Aldis.
Here's a story.
Take a trip into the mind of the meanie with Meanie Tunes. An animated look at the Blue Meanie's most hilarious stories.
Why did you eat that?
Available at youtube.com/mindofthemeanie. Oh, man. Subscribe now. That's our show. Thank you for joining me here each and every month on Fight TV. Do me a favor and check out a few other shows I have going on. Alternative commentary on Fight, and of course, the Mind of the Meanie podcast with the Blue Meanie. We are having way too much fun over there, so join us, won't you? This has been So Says Shernoff, because that is what Shernoff had to say. Bye now.